So, what really changes when you go from just believing in God to actually actively putting Him first in your life? Well, today we're going to break down the 7 big, tangible shifts that can completely transform a person's life, from the inside all the way out. Let's start with something I think a lot of us can relate to: that weird gap between what you believe and how you actually feel day to day. You believe in God, sure, but life still feels totally overwhelming. Or maybe you just feel stuck. And look, that's not a bad place to be. In fact, it's often the exact starting point for some real lasting change. So the solution we're looking at today is this idea of shifting from a passive belief to a really active practice. This isn't just about thinking differently. No, this is about a daily, conscious decision to hand over your plans, your emotions, your fears. It's an intentional choice, something you do consistently, not just a feeling that comes and goes. Okay, so how does this one big decision actually ripple through a life? Well, it's broken down into 7 core shifts. We're going to start with what happens on the inside and then see how it moves all the way to our outward actions. Let's dive in. All right, so the very first set of changes happens internally, right? These are the shifts in your mindset and your sense of self that really lay the foundation for everything else to come. The first shift is clarity. You know how life can feel so chaotic, where everything feels urgent and important all at once? Well, when you establish a single, number one priority, a natural order just starts to emerge from all that noise. And this is the huge difference between being scattered by what feels urgent and being guided by what is truly important. You start to separate the signal from the noise, and that allows you to move with real purpose, not just reacting to pressure. Okay, number 2. This one tackles a really heavy burden for so many of us: anxiety. A lot of that anxiety comes from this feeling that the entire weight of the world is resting solely on our shoulders. The big shift here is moving from trying to control every little thing to actually learning to trust. It's this daily practice of handing over the stuff you just can't carry. Now, the problems might not vanish overnight, but the burden is no longer yours to carry alone. And that's what creates the space for peace to really take root. And the third shift is all about your identity. So often, we build our sense of self on really shaky ground. Our job titles, our successes, what other people think of us. This change is all about finding a foundation that can't be rocked. This is really the difference between having a fragile identity and a rooted one. See, when your self-worth is tied to all those external things, you're constantly chasing approval. But when it's anchored in something that doesn't change, you start to walk with this quiet, stable confidence that doesn't go up and down with your daily performance. Okay, so we've looked at those huge internal shifts. Now let's dig into how they actually start to show up in your real-world actions and your day-to-day decisions. The fourth shift completely transforms how we make decisions. Instead of just reacting based on emotion or impatience or fear, we start to move toward a much more intentional and thoughtful way of choosing. And you can see the contrast right here. On one side, you have choices made for a quick, short-lived result. On the other, you have this pause. You seek direction, and you make a decision that's going to have a lasting positive impact. The goal isn't just to make a few good decisions. It's about walking in a consistent pattern of wisdom. So the fifth shift is about discipline, but this isn't about becoming super rigid or following a bunch of rules. It's actually about how one single commitment can cascade into every other part of your life. This daily commitment creates a powerful ripple effect. A spiritual discipline starts to shape your work ethic, your mindset, your daily routines. You become way more intentional with your time. You literally move from just talking about change to actually consistently living it out. All right, for our final section, we are zooming out to look at the big picture. How do all these internal and behavioral changes ultimately reshape your external world? We're talking about your relationships and your whole outlook on life. The sixth big shift happens in our relationships. I mean, it makes sense, right? When your core priorities change, how you connect with other people is going to change too. And this affects everything from how you love to where you invest your time. Now, there are really 2 sides to this. On one hand, you find yourself growing in patience and forgiveness. But on the other hand, you also become more discerning. You get better at recognizing which relationships are truly life-giving and which aren't. You kind of learn to stop forcing connections and trust that the right people will grow right along with you.
And here we are at the seventh and probably the most profound shift of them all. This last change isn't just about one part of your life, it's about the very lens through which you see everything. So before, a challenge or a problem might just feel like a random, pointless setback. With this new lens, though, the whole question shifts. It goes from, why is this happening to me, to what is God doing through this? You start to see purpose, even in the hard seasons. You're no longer just going through life, you're actively growing through it.
This whole idea is really anchored in this one foundational verse, Matthew 6:33. And the way it's interpreted here is that when your number one focus is aligned correctly, all the other essential parts of your life don't get forgotten. They actually start to fall into place. It's like you're not falling behind, you're being perfectly positioned. And that brings us to the biggest takeaway of all. The goal in all of this isn't perfection. It's not about living a life free of mistakes. The goal is alignment, that consistent daily choice to point your life in a certain direction. It's all about the journey, not some flawless destination. So, we want to leave you with this final thought. Looking at these 7 areas, your priorities, your anxiety, your identity, all the way to your actions, where could this whole process of alignment begin for you?